Welcome back to Macrocode. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing. Today we are going to learn how to create a simple REST API using .NET Core Entity Framework and MS SQL. So to begin with, let's start this video. So we are going to create a simple project. So we'll create new, then we can search API. Then you're going to use ASP.NET Core Web API template. Click next. So we'll give our project a simple name. You can call this REST sample. Then next. So here we are going to use .NET 7, which is under STS, so standard term support. So under authentication type, we can leave it as none. Then we can have it as a configure for HTTPS. So if you want to use Docker, you can actually enable this. So it will actually generate a Docker file for you. So if you want to use controllers, you check this. If you want to use minimal APIs, then you need to uncheck. So if you want to allow to have it enable Open API support, if you want Open API support, then you can check this. So we leave it as it is. So let's create. So our project will be created. And as you can see, it has created our project. So we have our weather forecast file. Then we have program.cs. Then we have app settings.json, where we'll be having our connection to the database. Then we have the controller. So we have our weather forecast controller. So if we just launch this project, it will give us a simple API. So we allow that. That is SSL certificate. So if we launch it, so you can see this is this REST sample. We can see our weather forecast, and if we try this, you can click try, then we click execute, then it will give you the response. So you can see the response, we have the data. So what we need to do, we are going to create a simple REST API for adding and updating students. So let's create a folder. So we'll create a folder here called models. So we'll create a folder for models. Then under models, let's create a class for student. So we'll place here, you can say student. So after that, we provide some fields. So that is our primary key. Then we can say student name. Then we can have maybe gender. So we'll say gender. Then we can have country. So we'll do this. So we can have string. So we can have your country. Another thing for students, maybe you can say email address. So I think this is enough. So you can have these three, around 5. So the next thing that you are going to do is to create our DB context, which will act as a connection to our database. So come to our project, create a folder, call it DB context. So this is where we are going to create our DB context class. So right click on the project, then create a class called application DB context. So we create a class here called application DB context. Then add. So this class, before we do anything, let's add the constructor public. So before we do anything, we need to install some nuggets. So this class is a derived class that is actually from DB context. So if we do that, we need to add So you can see, so let's change this folder. You can call it context. So that is it. Then here we need to install some. So this is the namespace should be context. So here we need to db context. If you do that, it will ask you to install some nuggets. So you can see it will ask you to install Microsoft Entity Framework. So if we do that, you can install it. So it will install the latest version. So you can see it is now using Microsoft Entity Framework Core. So if you come to the dependencies, then you will have the Microsoft Entity Framework Core. So the next, another thing that we need to install here, we need to install, so right click, then manage nuggets. Then we need to install SQL server. So we have a nugget for SQL. So this is it, Microsoft Entity Framework Core.SQL server. So install it, accept. So that is installed. So come to application DB context. So what we need to do is here, we need to say public application DB context, then DB options, then application DB context options. Then we have our base options, then we do that. So that is it. So after we have done that, then we need to now provide our database here. So you'll say public student, then the table will be students, then that is it. So we have created our application DB context, which will act as a connection to our database. So the next thing that we need to do is to have the app settings.json, which now connects to our database. So for this file here, we'll need to do something called, so do connection strings. Then inside this, we'll say, we'll provide the default connection. So we'll call it default connection. So the default connection will be, so I'll open my SQL server. So I'm using SMS SQL. So I'm using SQL Management Studio. So I'll come here, then I'll create a database. We'll call this sample API. Then if I click OK, so I'll need to copy my address for my server. That is the server name. So if I just copy here, I'll come to my default connection, then I'll say server is equals to, I paste the link, the name of my server. Then the next thing is a semicolon, then I'll say database is equals to the name of my database that I've just created. So the name we created is the sample API. Ensure the name matches what we are pasting on our settings. Then the next thing that we need to do is we need to say trust server. You can say trust connection. We need to trust the connection. So this one will say is equals to true. So I'll try to minimize this, then expand this. So trust connection is true. Then we need to say multi-active result. Multi-active result, you can have this as true. Then you can also say trust server certificate. Trust server certificate, have these also as true. So you can do these as true. So that is it. So everything should work now. So this is our complete connection. So I'll actually upload the source code. So if you want to access the source code, you can check the link below. So after you have done that, what we need to do next is to apply migration so that we have the database created in our, that is the table created in our database, the table students. So what you need to do, come to tools, then Nugget package manager, then package console. So you'll have something like this down here. So we need to add migration. So you'll do add migration, then we can say initial migration. So if we press enter, you can see add migration is not recognized. These are very cool error. So what we need to do, we need to add some nuggets here. So there's a nugget we call tools. So we need to add these nuggets. So this is it. Microsoft, where is it? Here it is. Entity framework called tool nuggets. So this is the nugget for the this package is actually for the Nugget package manager console in Visual Studio. So we need to install it. So install. Then after you have installed, you can run the command. You can see it is now running. So it has succeeded. We have something not going good. No database provider has been configured for this DB context. A provider can be configured by overriding the DB context. This is a very good error. So what we need to do, if you go to our program.cs, in our program.cs, we need to do some small changes. So one is to register our application DB context. So you'll come and say builder.services, then we'll say .add transient. No, you can say add, we'll say add DB context. Then you'll say, we'll provide the name of our DB context, which is the application DB context. Then we'll provide the options. So here we'll say options. Equals to options. So let me just put this down. So we'll do that. Then we'll say use. We are using SQL Server. So we'll select that. Then we need to have the connection. So we'll say builder dot get builder dot, we'll say configuration dot get connection string. Then we need to pass the name of our connection string. You remember this name that was on the app settings.json. So we need to get this name and add it here. So that is it. Then we need to close. So we need to have another one. So that is it. So is there anything that we need to add? Nothing. So that is it. So we only wanted to add this line of code. Add this. So you need to add this line of code. Then we can rerun our command again. So that enter. So everything is now working. So it does have, we have a, so let me just do this. Let me just delete the folder again. Then we see if there is anything that will happen. So just remove the files so you can see everything is okay. So sorry, there is something wrong. You can see on our migrations, on our application DB context, we need to have something here called DB set. Then we need to say student. That is it. So if we run our migrations, yes, you can see it is supposed to generate SQL commands. You can see that I used to create the tables. So it has created this SQL statement. It is creating the table students ID, which is an integer, the name, gender, column, email address. So, and it has actually assigned it as a primary key. So if you come to database, we don't have any database. I mean the tables. We don't have any table so far. So to apply these changes to our table and effect the migrations to the database, then we need to use a command called update database. Then enter. You can see there is so it is not able to update. So you can see there is something, there is a keyword called trust connection. So if we come here to our database, we need to check trust. So these so this is trust. It should be trusted connection. So do that, then update. Multi-active result set. It should be multiple. This should be multiple active results sets. Multiple result sets. Multiple active result sets should be true. So save that, then run update. So it is done. So we should be able to see our tables in our. You can see we have the students and the migrations history table, which actually tracks the migrations that we have done. You can see we have just initiated only one migration, and you have our student table. You can see. So after we have done that, we now need to create the controller. So come to controllers, then say add new. Then we want to do scaffolding. So create new scaffolded item. Then you can see MVC. So we are going to use API controller with actions. So you can see API controller with action using entity framework call, and we have API with read write endpoints using entity framework call. So this is so let's use this one. So let's use this one. So API controller with actions using entity framework call. So if we add it, so we'll select the model, which is the student, then the application DB context, then the controller name, we can call it students. Students controller, then we add. So if everything works, then our controller should be generated and our API should be ready. So it is generating the code. Something is wrong. You can see inconsistent accessibility property type DB is less accessible than property controller. So the model is students, yes. That is the error. So let's proceed. We see. So it's generating. If everything is okay, it will generate the code. There we are. So it has created a controller for our API. You can see the root API, then controller name. Then we have the student, get students, which will give us a list of students, then student by ID, then put, this is for updating students. Then we have post student, then we have delete student by an ID, then checks if a student exists. So these are complete CRUD API. So if we run this, we expect to see students. You can see we have the students controller. These are the endpoints. We have the students get, which will give us a list of students, then post, which will add students to our database, then get student by a specific ID, update students detail, then delete students. So what we need to do, remember in our database, we don't have any data so far. So ID, name, gender, country, then email address. So what we need to do, we need to create a student. So we will do that. So we are using Swagger. So try, then we need to, let's not update the ID because this is auto incremental. So you can leave it as it is. The name we can say James. Then gender we can say female, male. Then country, you can say Kenya. Then email address, you can say test@gmail.com. So if we execute this, we expect this to go through. So let's try. There you are. You can see it has actually gone through and it has given us the response. So the response is ID1, James, Mail, Kenya, and test Gmail. So if we come to our database, we should be able to see the data. You can see this is the data. James, Mail, Kenya, then that is it. So we can add another one. You can say Anne, then this is female, then coming from US. Then we can say test1 as the Gmail, then execute. You can see it has gone through and is with an ID2. You can try another one. We can say Vin, coming is a male, coming from India. Those who are India, please subscribe. Then 3, then execute. We can also try another one. John. You can say John, male, US. Viewers from US, please subscribe. Then can do that, then execute. Then you can see we have John, male, US, then that is it. So if we try this, you can see we have all our students. We have the James, gender, country, and the email address. So the next thing, we now have our endpoints. So we have the get endpoint, which retrieves the students list from our database. So if we try and execute, it will give us a list of students. You can see this is the endpoint and this is the students list. So you can see James, male from Kenya. Then number 2 is Anne, female from US. Then Vin, male from India. Then John, male from US. So this is the list of students. So it has given us all the list of students. So the next endpoint, so we have seen the get students post, that is the get, which retrieves the list of students. Then post method, which gives us allows us to add students detail. Then get students by ID. So here you pass the ID that you want to retrieve. So we will pass the ID number 4. It will give us the student with ID 4. You can see it has given us John, male, US. You can try another one, number 1. So it has given us 1 James, male. So that is it. So that is the get method with an ID. We have the put. So put method allows us to update the students' details. So as you can see, let's just see. You can see number 4 is John, male, US, then test4@gmail.com. So let's change the students with ID 4 to be Vincent. So we'll supply the ID here, number 4. Then we'll say the name should be Vincent, then is male, then country. Currently it is John is from US, but we can say Vincent is from Germany. So you can say Vincent is from Germany. Then email address is test. You can say jar@gmail.com. So if we do that and update, you can see we have an error. Response status is 400. So there is a bad request. So let's see our code. The ID. So this is the ID. We need to pass the ID is 4. So if we try, you can see it is success. So if we come to our database and execute, you can see Vincent is the new name, male, then Germany, then jar@gmail.com. So everything has gone well. So the last endpoint is the delete endpoint, which you use it to delete a record from the database. So the only thing that you need to do is to pass the ID. So you'll pass ID number 4. Then if we execute, you can see it has gone through. So the database, if we refresh, you can see we only have 4 records, but if we refresh, we have 3 records. So that is it, guys, about REST API in ASP.NET Core. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing and like the video and share.